Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ceres podcast. In today's episode, Mark Petrou sits down with a great friend of ours, Brent Watson, who owns Y Past Chippy in Kexborough with his wife Anne. Brent's been a friend of mine and a customer of Ceres from nearly day one, back when it was called the Batter Company. He's an avid listener of the Ceres podcast, a huge supporter, and someone who really knows his stuff. I don't want to spoil this conversation, but it's insightful, honest, and full of great takeaways. But let me just say, Brent is the kind of operator who truly understands his location and customers. He runs a really tight ship and he tells it like it is, all while being one of the kindest, wisest people that I know in the industry. I remember visiting his shop once and I was watching him cut fish, filter his oils and top up the pans without skipping a beat. I did have to make the tea, of course, but he's hands-on and it shows. We often talk about women in fish and chips, and Brent makes it really clear in this episode. None of whatever he does in this business works without his brilliant staff and his wife Anne, who's right there in the thick of it with him. Quick heads up, there's a bit of crackle on Mark's microphone. We're investigating the issue. It's more noticeable with earphones, less so on speakers. But thank you for your patience and apologies in advance, and we will be sorting it as quick as we can. This episode is brought to you by Ceres, and today we're highlighting a product that's been with us since the beginning, pretty much like Brent, our Ceres Natural Batter Mix. It delivers a crisp golden finish without a hard crust or a soggy bottom, made with 2 premium British flours from Essex and 2 unique raisin agents. And if you really want to level up your battered fish, try our Predus number 1. It boosts adhesion, improves oil life and adds flavour from the inside out. It's made in the UK, allergen friendly, and it's packed in small packets for peak freshness. So whether you're frying 50 portions or 5,000, trust what works. Simple, reliable and trusted. That's the Ceres Natural Batter Mix and Predus number 1. Head to ceres.shop to find out more. And also don't forget to use our free Ceres calculators. From profit margins to potato yield, they will help you make smarter decisions and faster. And if you're not on our mailing list, now's the time. Exclusive insights, offers, competitions and news straight to your inbox. The links will all be in the show notes. Alright, let's get on to it. Here's Mark and Brent Watson.
Brent, it's really good to have you here. Long time no see. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's nice to see you. It's been a
I
while.
Always get it has been a while. Yeah, I always get told off by Stelios for having really long introductions, but I do want to say we met around about 2006. You were one of the very first frequent posters on Chippy Chat as Mr. Chips, and we'll come to that as you tell your story. And you're actually well known by 1 or 2 people for another reason, which I'll come to in the fullness of time. I don't want to disclose too much now because it might throw you off telling your story. But I think I might have made you famous without you knowing, but we'll talk about that in a while anyway. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to start you off by saying you were born in 1967. Your dad, Ken, worked in a fish and chip shop in 1968, just a year after you were born. It wasn't his chip shop. It was his father-in-law's. It was his wife, your mum, Gina's father-in-law's shop. And he got chef training anyway, hadn't he? Take the story from there and I'll fill in a few bits that you may not remember that I've made notes on already.
Right. Well, my first memory were sort of being in my grandparents' shop as a small child. It were in York. They bought it in '68, so a year after I were born, and I think it were a Jubilee Terrace, and it were a typical end terraced house where the front room had been turned into a fish and chip shop, you know.
Yeah.
And I can remember as a toddler, so I could have only been 3 at the time, you know, getting told off for drawing patterns in the dripping in the pans what had set.
We've all done that.
Yeah, and I can remember him having wooden duckboards behind the range what he stood on, and the old, you know, the wooden drawer and all that. So my grandma and granddad bought this shop. Well, going back, my granddad were a senior overman at the colliery, and back then they had something called super annum, which were like a pension scheme. But you could draw this money out of this super annum. So he drew his money out of this super annum, left the colliery, and bought this fish and chip shop in York. Now then, he'd been previously in World War II. He were in TA, so he got called up really early when war broke out, and he joined army as a cook. And he were really good at his job and one thing or another. So he ended up becoming a cook for the officers. So he were posted in Belgium during the war, but he obviously weren't up front line. He were one step back, doing this officer's mess and cooking. So he'd sort of done that, come out of war, gone back to colliery, did all his exams, worked his way up to senior overman. Well, senior overman is third in rank from the big boss. So you've got a colliery manager, you've got an under manager, then you've got a senior overman. So he's number 3, but he worked regular nights. So manager weren't there and under manager weren't there because they didn't work night shifts. So basically my grandfather were in charge of the entire colliery. He was the boss of the entire colliery. So he were doing pretty good, and he got this pension scheme which he drew. And he wanted to go into fish and chips, so he found this shop in York, and he was a keen sea angler, and there were a guy who had some fish and chip shops called Mickey Wood, who were from Barnsley. He were actually a fishmonger, so he had fishmonger stalls on the local market, but he also owned some fish and chip shops. And my grandfather were in sea angling club with him. And with Roy Mason, well, Lord Roy Mason, who at the time were in the Labour Party in the 70s, were, quite high up. I think he was in charge of Northern Ireland when all troubles were going on in the 70s. Well,
he was a big deal.
He was a big fish in a fishing club.
Got ya.
But anyway, I digress. The guy who he went to was this guy called Mickey Wood. So my granddad went and trained up with Mickey Wood in his shop, having been a cook in the army, and then opened the shop in York. And it did really well. I've just last night I was chatting with Stell online, and I went through an old cabinet that my grandmother gifted me before she passed away, and I found some handwritten notes of fish prices. So on the 3rd of the 8th, 1971, they were paying £2.40 a stone for cod.
Wow.
And £2 a stone for haddock. Now this is in mid 1971, so it's after decimalisation. So them pounds are pounds as we would have today.
Yeah.
So yeah, £2.40 a stone for cod. Imagine that these days. Wow.
That's mental, isn't it? That is crazy.
Mental. Yeah. So my mum and dad used to go most weekends, and my dad used to peel spuds, and my dad used to help him prep, and and then unfortunately, my grandma and granddad only had this shop 3 years. My granddad got diagnosed with bladder cancer. And this is 1971, so it's a big deal. He had to go in for big op, and then fish and chips were just too much. It were too much. They'd got shop going. The little loan that they got to put towards his pension, they'd managed to pay off in the 3 years, so they owned this shop outright.
Yeah.
So they ended up coming out of fish and chips, and they bought a guest house in Bridlington. Okay. With a back in them days, guest house on East Coast, well, any coast in Britain, only worked 6 months. So it was a season. So their thinking was, work 6 months, 6 months off. Work 6 months, 6 months off, and it'll be easier work for.
It's lighter duties as well, isn't it?
It is,
lower hours.
Yeah. So they ended up doing that. So that was the only link to fish and chips really early on, when my grandparents having this shop. And then, like I said, they went to Bridlington, did the guest house, and my dad still worked at Colliery. And then roll on to 80s.
Yeah.
My dad's still working at Colliery, got a really good job at Colliery. So my dad was it was called mechanisation team, and basically used to install alt machinery on coalface.
Yeah.
And then they'd do one cut, and that were them done. And then they'd go to another coalface, what were finished, and they'd uninstall alt machinery. So he got a job where he were doing different things all the time. He were installing or transporting machinery from pit top to coalface, which could be 2 miles, 3 miles, whatever. And he did that for years and years and years. And he worked 7 days a week. He were up at 5 every day. And then he were a bit of a night owl. So, he'd go to the pub and he'd have a couple of beers, and he wouldn't get in well midnight. So my earliest recollections of my dad were him being very grumpy. Yeah. Very grumpy indeed.
Tired, yeah.
And, So in 1984, we had miners' strike. So my mum was a nursery nurse. She worked at a school as a nursery teacher. And my dad were on strike for a year. And I sort of, I'd left school and being interested in cars and motorbikes and all things like that. I ended up going into motor trade. And my passion were in motor trade. And I became a painter panel beater, and I moved from garage to garage, and I really weren't making a lot of money, but I liked doing what I did.
You enjoyed the job.
I enjoyed the job, but it weren't filling my bank account by no means.
No.
And my dad had left. That was it. So that we had miners' strike, and then my dad went back after the strike and did a few months, and then they shut the colliery.
Yeah. He must have spent like 20 years underground, didn't see a lot of daylight. Your mum probably did the lion's share of the parenting, because Dad was always down the mine. It must have been not conventional.
Yeah, it were. He sort of worked 7 days a week, 2 hours overtime every day, and then he would also kept racing pigeons. So if he weren't at work, he were at the pigeons, and if he weren't at work or the pigeons, he maybe had a couple of hours with his pals at the pub. Yeah. So my mum did a thesis on part of her course when she were becoming a nursery nurse. She got to do an essay kind of thing on something, and so it was titled "The Pigeon Widow," and she did a really big essay what she submitted about her life and her life. With pigeon racing and married to a coal miner.
But he was very, very capable. He had an engineering mind, didn't he? Turn his hand to just about anything. I know we'll talk about it in a while. That you built your house with him,
he was very resourceful, and he always had been very handy. And even with racing pigeons, in 1972, we were top of his game. He won his pigeons won a national race, which was the creme de la creme of the racing year. And I remember people coming to our house wanting to buy birds off him, wanted to buy. He could sell just eggs, never mind actual birds, because it came from.
Really?
Yeah, it's a bit like racehorses, isn't it? It's all to do with breeding and thoroughbreds and big money in '70s, massive money in pigeons. So he were earning good money at pit because he were putting all these hours in, and then he were earning decent money from pigeons, basically, from his hobby.
Yeah, good man.
And he left the coal mine, and they paid for him to go on a bricklaying course. It was part of his redundancy package. But he'd always been very, very handy and could turn his hand to anything, as you said. And so he went on this bricklaying course, and then he started doing a few jobs, building walls for people, garages, stuff like that. Not particularly houses, but, whatever they needed. And one day he were driving along, and he saw this derelict building for sale. So this derelict building were in a village called Montbreton. Now, Montbreton is a village on outskirts of Barnsley.
Yeah.
And it's where the film Kes, which were an iconic 60s film, Kestrel for a Knave, was the book. And Kes were filmed when the little lad goes and climbs the wall and gets the kestrel egg, which he then, or the chick or whatever, and he ends up with a kestrel. That were Montbreton. That were filmed at Montbreton Priory. And this derelict building, there were 3 streets called Hope, Faith and Charity. And it was like a poor end of the village. But this building was at end of Faith Street. And its actual address was 1B4. So a number 1, the letter B, and a number 4. 1B4, Faith Street. And at the time, I think there were a guy spray painting cars in this shop. So my dad looked at it, and it needed a new roof and it needed some work doing to it. But he decided that it'd be good for me, so he'd buy it, knock it into shape, and then I could have this building and start a business in this building. And my dad being my dad, he decided to go to Barnsley Council and make sure that the work we wanted to do in it, which were more spare parts and probably go into motorbike side of things rather than cars, that it had correct planning permission, because this guy was spray painting cars. So he walked into planning department and got a meeting and just said, I'm thinking about buying this building, told them all about it. And she basically, and I mean, this is really early on in computers. It would have been like almost the old BBC kind of computers. So she types it in and she says to him, fish and chip shop. And he went, no, there's a bloke in spray painting cars. It's like a garage. She went, types it in again, fish and chip shop. So he says, no, it's spray painted cars. She went, well, it shouldn't be. It could be in trouble because according to our records, it's a fish and chip shop. So that were it. That were end of my enterprise, having a workshop. I went out the window immediately, and so he decided, in his wisdom, that he'd open a fish and chip shop. So this is
brilliant.
This is end of 80s. This is probably 89, something like that. 89, 88, 89. So he buys this building, puts a new roof on it, knocks it all into shape. So it's pre-internet. There's no eBay. So he bought everything he needed from Exchange of Mart. So he used to buy Exchange of Mart every week and scour it for anything fish and chip related. And he found a 2-pan Hopkins range, counter range. I think it were in Castleford, somewhere like that, not too far away. And when he got there to buy it range, this guy had got all sorts. He'd bought a Chippy, and he didn't want it to be a Chippy. He wanted it to be whatever. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So my dad bought Bay Marie, chipper, rumbler, range. So I got all them things, and then he got it's very similar to my granddad. My dad had got a pal who he'd worked at Colliery with, who'd also gone on to open a fish and chip shop. So he went and had a talk to him and had a couple of let's say refresher lessons.
Yeah.
After God knows how many years, 20 odd years, maybe even nearly 30 years later, than he'd helped his father-in-law, and he had a couple of refresher lessons, and he decided to buy a Bittling filter machine. So he kicked off owning a Bittling filter machine, which in '89 was pretty revolutionary,
That's forward thinking, isn't it?
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. And I think it was called Crystal Filtration back then. Who did Bittlings, and they were original Bittling. So he opened this shop. Eventually, he got it all tiled out, put this range in, put everything in. It looked dead smart. But he opened it, did no marketing whatsoever. My dad didn't understand about marketing or any of that side of business. In my dad's mind, you opened a fish and chip shop, you opened the door, and people would just walk in,
There used to be a time when that happened.
Yeah.
There used to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was that time. Maybe things had already started changing by then.
Yeah. So, and obviously you're in Barnsley, and it's just after alt coal mining had closed by this time. Right.
Not the most affluent area, is it?
It's not the most affluent area at the time. I mean, it's come on in leaps and bounds now, but at the time it was struggling. We were in a bit of a mess locally. And so he opened this shop, and it did okay. But it weren't by no means great. And one day, the spud man come walking into the shop to deliver his spuds, and my dad had a cup of tea with him and got chatting, and he says, "I know just the shop for you. I know just the shop." He says, "It needs some proper TLC." He says, "But I've served it since 1950s," he says, "and it were a cracking shop. It's always been a cracking shop." He says, "But this guy's got it, and it's just in a right state." He says, and he needs out. He needs out. He's going to lose his shop. He can't afford to pay his mortgage on it, and he needs out. So my dad went to see this chap, and he basically traded his gleaming shop in Mount Breton, which had just opened maybe a year before, and a little bit of money, which he knew this guy needed because he needed to pay his mortgage, and bought, which is our shop now, which is Y-Pass at Kexborough. It weren't called Y-Pass, that's another story, but there we go. So he bought this shop, and my mother were in this, she were like beside herself, because it was absolutely, it were just, it needed cleaning, it needed painting, it had no done to it for donkey's years, it was just in a state of disrepair.
This shop was actually a fish and chip shop for decades and decades and decades. It was known as Howard's, and then Harry Hardcastle had it for 40 years before the guy that you bought it off. And it was actually, the property was built in 1640. Is that right? 1640? Around about 1640?
Around about 1640, yeah, the actual original building.
So no straight floors, no straight walls, no straight...
Walls are about a metre thick, If you want to put something through a wall, you've got to go through a metre of stone.
And it was a single story. It was just like a hut. Let's not flatter it. It was a hut, really.
It was
not.
Yeah, it was just a nut, and single story. It got a piece of land to the east and a piece of land to the west. The one to the east were a car park. The one to the west were just full of brambles and overgrown. But it were about the same size as the car park. But it was just a nut. And my dad, we lived at a village called Royston. So Royston, Mount Breton, and Kexborough are in a bit of a triangle. So as we used to travel to Kexborough when we first ever got it, the guy who we'd done the deal with used to come other way,
going towards his shop.
Going towards his shop, and he used to be smiling and laughing at us. And he said to me, Dad, why is he laughing at us? And my dad said, because he thinks he's got the better deal, because I've given him a gleaming shop and some money.
And money.
Yeah, for this hut. But this hut had got history behind it. It had got history of being a really good fish and chip shop.
Yeah.
And another thing was that Montbreton was sort of east at town.
Yeah.
And Kexborough were west at town. And the west of most towns, believe it or not, is usually the most affluent area.
Yeah.
And the east tends to be the least affluent area. So Kexborough just sits above a village called Cawthorne, which is actually where my son Daniel lives now. He lives down in Cawthorne. And Cawthorne is the village. If you make some brass in Barnsley, you live in Cawthorne. You know.
Imagine that, the son of a chip shop owner living in
Cawthorne. I know. So he lives down in Cawthorne, which is next village. So there's plenty of chimney pots around it, and there's it's on right side of town. So we bought it, and much to my mum's disgruntlement, really, because she was like, "Why would
dismay?
Why would you give up this shiny shop for this shop?" So, I think he shut it for 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks he retiled it. It had orange formica on walls.
Yeah,
glasses in range were that bad you couldn't see products in top box. You couldn't see your fish. They were horrendous.
So, what range was in there?
A 2-pan salamander.
Okay, 2-pan salamander.
A salamander were made in. Well, they were made in. It's called Slaithwaite, but locals call it Slowit, and it's between Huddersfield and Oldham.
Okay.
So, when we wanted a new range, we actually went to this place, what made these, and it was still operating, but it weren't making fish and chip ranges. It had gone on to make, I think, boilers and all sorts of weird and wonderful engineering stuff, but no fish and chip ranges. And the reason they weren't making fish and chip ranges is because in 97, when we were looking for a range, which we'll come to it in a bit, but when in 97 we were looking for a range, they'd not got a CE mark on their range.
That's up.
They'd never bothered.
They never had one.
They never had one. So CE marks had come into force, and they hadn't got one. So he says, "I can make you a range, any you want, but it'll not have a CE mark." And I was thinking, I'm not going to have any insurance here, am I?
Yeah, not so much.
So it had a 2-pan salamander, and pans were on simmerstats. You know, like you have a simmerstat on a Bain Marie. So it just goes 1 to 10. It's just a white porcelain button, what you turn. That's all it had for. It had no clocks
for control.
For control, it just had simmerstats. So, you put your thermometer in your oil, and when it got to 180, you turned it till burner went off, and then you put a little biro mark on it, and that was 180. And if
people will relate to that, listeners will know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so that were it. That were in this 2-pan range, and my dad opened after 2 weeks. He retiled it, opened it, and straight away, it were better than Montbreton. Straight away, it were doing a lot better, and he. At that point, I was still in garages. I was still spray painting cars. So he done it for probably 6 months, 7 months. And he asked me if I would want to come and work with him. So I thought, well, I'm getting nowhere fast, in motor trade. I might as well. And the only person I'd known was a guy at Royston who'd had a fish and chip shop. And he used to race motorbike and sidecar outfits.
Yeah.
And I always thought, he's done all right for his son, that guy. He can afford to go racing on the weekend. He's got a nice car, and he's done all right out of fish and chips. So in my mind, I'm thinking, fish and chips is going to be a lot better living than painting cars for people. And so I said, yeah. And I finished working garage at Christmas and then started working in my dad's shop after New Year. My mum and dad all had gone to Tenerife because they always went to. My auntie and uncle owned an apartment in Tenerife, so every Christmas, mum and dad used to go to Tenerife for their holiday. So he'd have gone to Tenerife, and that same holiday, while they're in Tenerife, I met Anne, my wife. So as I met Anne, my wife, on Christmas break, I started in fish and chip industry on January 2nd or whatever. So
sounds to me like you've had the best Christmas ever.
Yeah. I probably did, actually, thinking about it, but there you go. And so I went to work for my dad, and I was doing what everybody does when they go to work for their dad. I was doing spuds. I was just spud bashing and learning how to cut fish and just doing prep, really, not doing any frying. And I can remember thinking, I don't really want to go in front of all them people and stand there in front of a back of a range. I feel a bit self-conscious. Yeah, and a bit shy because I'd worked in garages. I'd not worked with public at all.
Not front-facing at all.
No, not at all. So I can remember being quite conscious of that. So I was quite happy where I was in back, peeling spuds and just getting
physically, you're quite tall as well, aren't you? So you can't really hide behind a frying range.
No,
you can talk to the customers over the top of it quite easily.
Yeah. Anne always says that. It's easy for you, Brent, because you can see the mouse when, it's busy on a Friday night and there's a lot of chitter-chatter in shop and there's sound of frying. You know what it's like on a Friday night. And I'm chatting to people and Anne's like, range is straight in front of Anne's eyes, top at range.
Yeah.
She can't even see people. She can hear them slightly. And so she finds it really difficult. But for me, I'm that tall. I can go over top of it. But I didn't like that early days, but there you are.
No.
And so, we did that for a while. And then my dad came down with an illness. He started being poorly. And we thought he'd got pneumonia. But when it come out, it got a disease which you get off keeping birds. So his pigeons that he kept most of his life, he'd actually got the dust on his lungs from the pigeons.
Yeah.
And it's called pigeon lung disease. And what it does is it's almost like asbestosis. It actually, you get a disease in your lung and it starts eating away at your lungs. So
wow.
He instantly got rid of pigeons, sold his pigeons, and he thought, as you would, well, I'm not with pigeons now, and I'm not with dust, I'll get better. But you don't. That don't happen. He lived quite a long time. His cause of death when he passed away was pigeon lung disease, but he lived another flipping heck. He died in 2016, and this is like 19. I'm trying to think what year we were that me and Anne took over. I think we took over in 92, something round 92.
Yeah,
I'm almost sure. And
so nearly 25 years he was still around. But
he was still around, but he couldn't run a fish and chip shop. He didn't have capacity, lung capacity. He was soon tired. And so he basically would either sell it or do you and Anne want to rent it from me? So Anne were working in a service station, just a petrol attendant in a service station. And I'd just been like spud bashing for Dad. So we just looked at each other and went, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity, a good option for you two.
Yeah.
I guess getting to work with your dad and spending time with him in the shop, and then the time that you had after he wasn't able to work so much was really golden, because you didn't get that time with him when he was down the mines and,
That's
and,
right,
and when he
yeah.
was growing up. So I know you and your dad were close, and he actually not only was he your boss and your dad and your inspiration, he also helped you build your forever home with Anne as well, didn't he? Just up the road from the Chippy.
Yeah,
Which I guess that's really magical for you to have been able to do that. So when you took over at Whitepass, all of your training, all of your expertise, that had come to you from your dad, who had got some of it from his father-in-law and from his professional training as a chef. Did you get any other formal training, or because I'm gonna come to the thing that I alluded to at the start of the podcast in a moment. I just really wanted to know where you learned your technique of frying fish and chips, and I take it you're in Yorkshire. You must be in beef dripping.
No,
You're not in beef dripping.
No, we're in oil.
You're in oil.
We've been in oil since the beginning. We've never been in beef dripping.
We've never been in beef dripping.
No.
Okay.
No. So I think my dad was one of these guys that he studied everything. He really went to town on every aspect of his life that he did. He really studied everything, and if he weren't happy with a certain product, he'd go to another shop, or he'd research it, or he'd try and find a way round it. And I think he taught me, and I think this happens a lot in fish and chips. You can't do the same thing in July as you do in January. You've got to evolve as months change. You evolve your technique, so you can't just say you do one thing. You can't do your spuds in July on a Monday morning and leave them in a tank of water and come to them Tuesday afternoon and think they're going to be great, because they're going to have stewed and it's red hot in shop and they're going to be horrible. So, but you could sort of do that in winter, because in winter spuds are old, they stand well in water, water's freezing cold. So I think my dad learnt me that, it's not just a set thing. You've got to be thinking all the time, and you've got to be adapting all the time, and you've got to be on your toes with fish and chips. It's not just buy a burger, put it on a griddle, put it on a bun, sell it. It's a bit of an art form, isn't it? You'll know that. It is what it is. Yeah. How long do you fry a piece of fish? Well, which way it's wind blowing that day? It's that kind of thing, isn't it? It comes with experience, and it comes with doing job, I guess. But yeah, I think being at motor trade as a painter panel beater helped me, because when you're rubbing a car down and you're preparing a car to respray it, it has to be perfect. It's not like an house where you're slapping emulsion on and you can get away with murder. Every imperfection, if you're doing a car roof and somebody looks at it down the car roof, if there's an imperfection, just a speck of imperfection, it shows up, because it's like looking down a mirror, And so that trade had to be really precise, and I think I fetched some of that. I probably early days fetched too much of that to fish and chip trade, because I can remember prepping spuds and taking every blemish. I've not a blemish on them, spending hours on these spuds. And it weren't till later in life that I realised that, if you leave a little bit of skin, I'm not talking something what's bad or green or manky on them, but a little bit of skin, you chip it and it's a tiny little bit of skin or end of one chip, and it fries off, or you can barely see it. So I think in early days I overdid it really. I still cut fish. I still cut all my own fish. At the minute, I'm doing all my own spuds and doing all my own fish. My fish, I cut 6 ounce and the 6 ounce. if they go 6.5 ounce, I take half an ounce off. If they go 5.5 ounce, I'll put that half ounce from that bit inside. I'll open, butterfly it and just duck it in, and I make it 6 ounce. So I cut my fish meticulously 6 ounce, and what's left, I make fish cakes, which we've done since 60s. My grandmother were making fish cakes back in 60s. 60s, 70s. So that recipe and where we did that came from Grandma. And we've always done that. So we've always maximised every bit of profit out of the case of fish, and out of the bag of spuds. And we then that building then after that initial 2-week refurb, my mum and dad bought a narrowboat. Well, they bought a shell. They bought a brand new shell for a narrowboat, and they went off and built a narrowboat. And they built this 55-foot narrowboat and went and lived on it. So they sold our family home, what had been fetched up in Royston, where we live.
Yeah. And
they went off for about 15 years living on this narrowboat. And then they were in a boat club in Doncaster. And some new members joined this boat club, and new members, as they do, joined this boat club and kicked a fuss that my mum and dad were living aboard all year round. And rules at boat club said you could only live on it, 9 months out of the year, basically, because it weren't residential. So they kicked up a big fuss. But like my dad were like, yeah, but who looks after everybody's boat when nobody's here? Me. I'm like unpaid night watchman sort of thing. And exactly how it always happens. They kicked up all this fuss, these people, and then these people moved on and went. But by that time, it all come to committee and one thing and another, and they were all going on that, if you can't produce a council tax bill for your home address, then you can't be a member and you can't have your boat here. And this boat club, I know, typical, isn't it? But this boat club were absolutely superb. It were a couple of £100 for a year. It had got a social club. It were affiliated to all boat clubs all over the country.
And they weren't doing anybody any harm.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Just makes no sense, does it?
But the busybodies came along and caused this trouble. So my dad said to me, "Mum, well, we're going to have to have an house." So he started looking for a piece of land to build an house, to build his own house. And then he come to me one day and he said, I don't know why I'm looking for a piece of land. Well, I've got a piece of land here outside the shop. So we've got car park at one side. We've got like this as much land at the other side, but it was just full of brambles and it were overgrown land.
Yeah.
So he put in for planning permission and got some guy who some agent who could try and get him planning permission. Yeah. And I think initially they said no, you can't build, on it. And then the guy, having come and spoke to me and Dad, he realised that our shop, having been built in 1640, were a workshop, which is the chip shop now, and 12 cottages. One of these cottages were on this same site, this piece of land. So it
previously developed.
Becomes brown land. Yeah, previously developed. So that
I know all about that.
Yeah, so my dad got planning permission.
Good man.
To build a 3-bedroomed house. Half on top of the chip shop and then half on this land. So the house has got a kitchen, diner and a lounge downstairs, but upstairs it comes halfway across the chip shop. So he took half a roof off the chip shop and built up off of the chip shop.
Yeah.
And the house and chip shop, for want of a better way of looking at it now, look like it's just one unit, but obviously it's a new bit on top of an old bit.
Yeah, it looks like it's been there forever.
It does.
Yeah,
it does.
He does. He did a really good job.
You
did a really good job.
Yeah. So he did that, And he built that while we were still trading. So me and Anne are trading, and he's got scaffolding up, and he's building his house on top. So my mum and dad then, when they come to end of well, from there on in, they sort of lived above the shop in winter and went boating all summer. And then they did that for quite a few years. And then as my dad were getting his disease, what he got were progressing a little bit more, he decided to sell his boat and live at the shop, above the shop, and which he did. So if we're moving forward then to when mum and dad lived above the shop, they would come in and give us an hand. And it was just at the time that we were having kids. So as we were having our kids, and Anne were having to take more time, because up till us having kids, me and Anne spent every minute of every day working together in the shop.
Did you have any staff as well? Maybe one or two part-timers?
One or two part-timers, yeah.
That was it.
That was it. Yeah, we just had I think we had a part-time girl who did Friday and Saturday lunch. And that rest at shifts, we were just me and Anne. We were just in there doing it. And we had Daniel in 97.
Yeah.
And in 97, 97 were a bit of a game-changing year. There'd been a couple of game-changing years, but 97 we had Daniel, our son. Anne had 2 weeks off. She had I don't know if she'd tell you better than me, but she definitely had 2 weeks off. I don't know if she had a week before she had him, and then a week after she had him, and then come back. And I can remember putting him in a car seat rocker on top of freezer while we were prepping on the morning as a little baby. So, but that's where we were. Also,
so you got another baby that year as well, didn't you? You got a new range.
I got a new range. So we'd been in Tenerife in the Christmas 96/97, and I would just laid on beach, and I just said to Anne, we need a new range. And she was like, we can't afford a new range. That cost as much as a terraced house. And I went, yeah, but we need a new range, and we can't carry on like this. So basically, we were that busy at this time. On a Saturday, we used to fry chips and fry chips and fry chips till we couldn't get any more chips in chip box. And then first 15, 20 minutes of being open, we'd run out of bloody chips, hadn't we? Because we'd only got 2 pans. So, and Anne used to say, oh, they're horrible, Brent. When I'm scooping them, it's like I'm giving them mashed potatoes, especially in summer months, and you're new and they're just all clumping together.
Clumpy.
And she's saying, they're never going to come back. And every week, all these people had come back and they'd queue up for these chips. And I was like, pulling my hair out. Knew no about blanching, knew no about that. I'd been taught straight fry, that's how you did it. I didn't have a clue how else to do it. And so I decided, laid on this beach, that we needed a new range. So we bought a 3-pan Hopkins range. And we had a few different people come round. And we went for a 3-pan Hopkins range. Which I've still got, believe it or not. So,
no, I believe it.
Yeah. It's been a workhorse, honestly. It's been a workhorse. It's been tweaked. It's been modernised. It's been fetched a bit more up to scratch. But generally, it is just a 3-pan. No fancy on it. It's got no filtration. Although we've always right from, like I said, beginning. Me and Dad had a bittling from day one. So we've always had a filter machine, and the range came in 97. Daniel came in 97, and then Barnsley Chronicle, which is local rag, ran a competition in 97 for best fish and chips. And we won it, didn't we? We went. It was customer vote, and then they picked, I think, 3 or 4 shops with most votes, and then it were a couple of. I can't even remember her name now, but it were a couple of ladies from M Treble F back in 97 who came and judged it. They judged them last 3 shops. Came and just bought fish and chips and went outside, fish and chips open, and they judged them. And then we won it. And from that day on, we were just in a different league. We'd already got new range, so we got more capacity, and we suddenly won this competition in local rag, and trade just went up instantly, as it does. And
Right.
I think at that time we were still doing 5/9s for teas. My dad right early on decided to go to tea time. When we first moved to Kexborough, we were doing open at 8 o'clock, shut at like midnight. We were still in that old traditional time slot. And, you'd spend all night twiddling your thumbs, and then at 11 o'clock, 3 old men had come in who didn't know what they wanted because they'd all were half soaked. And, you'd end up selling them a fish each, So my dad had decided after about 6 months, so right early on in Kexborough, that he were going to do 5/9 tea time, 5 o'clock till 9 o'clock. So we'd got Daniel, a new baby. We'd got this new range. We'd won this competition, and I said to Anne, "Let's go 5 while I think it was 5 while 8 or 5 while 7:30. I think it was 7:30. So she said, well, why don't we go 4 while 7:30? So I went, right, we'll do 4 while 7:30. So we changed to 4 while 7:30. And we were taking same money as we used to do, 5 while 9. But we were home earlier, and we got a baby, and,
Great.
So off we did. We did that in 97. And then,
now, you never opened Saturday nights. Not from day one did you open Saturday nights at all, did you?
No, we never opened Saturday nights. We always just did Saturday lunch, and Saturday lunch were phenomenal. I don't know if it was just a Barnsley thing, but Saturday lunch were busier than Friday. It were unbelievable how busy Saturday lunches used to be. Yeah. And I don't think Saturday lunch is certainly volume of food cooked aren't as busy now as they were then. But obviously on takings, then it's just inflation and everything else. You're still taking more money. But if I look back at what I used to cut up for a Saturday lunch, how many bags of spuds, Saturday lunch were phenomenal in Barnsley. It was just a thing. Fish and chips at Saturday lunch were a big thing here.
Yeah.
And but Saturday night, I don't know. I don't know why my dad never did Saturday night, and we just carried on with same because we'd never done Saturday night. We weren't bound to put Saturday night on and work Saturday night. So we didn't work Saturday night. We didn't work Sunday, but we did every other shift. When we first got Y-Pass, when my dad did his deal and we first got it were doing 4 bags of spuds a week on every opening except Sunday lunch.
Wow.
That's how bad it was.
That's not even pedestrian. That's not even. Yeah, that's shocking. That's
shocking, isn't it? Yeah. So that's how much it needed some TLC, and it needed sorting out. And
so, just that's the first time you mentioned the name of your shop. It's called Y-Pass, as in Y go past. And where did that name come from?
A service station at A38 near Burton-on-Trent.
Right. So you just liked it.
Dad did. It was I didn't name it. My dad named it. So my auntie and uncle who owned an apartment in Tenerife lived in Lichfield, Staffordshire. Yeah. So it was my mum's brother. And at time he was director of Tarmac Housing, which was biggest house builder in country. He was a big cheese for my uncle. And so my mum and dad and my auntie and uncle were really good friends, and spent a lot of time with each other. So my dad and my mum and dad had go to Lichfield, and they'd come to Barnsley, and they spent a lot of time going up and down A38. And there were a garage, and outside of this garage it just said Y-PAS, and that what play on words were Y pass this garage. And for some bizarre reason, he must have liked quirky names, because that one at Montbrett were called the 1B4.
Yeah.
Because that was its postal address, 1B4. So he called it 1B4 Chip Shop. So this became Y-Pass. And I can remember hating it. When I first took over, I can remember thinking, why didn't you call it, Arkwright's Fish and Chips or Watson's Fish and Chips or whatever? But it grew on me. People either get it or don't get it. There's no in between. I've been to fish and chip exhibitions, and they'll say, "What's your shop called?" And I'll say, "Y-Pass," and they'll go, and spelt like this, and then they'll go, "Y-Pass, that's amazing. That's a right name for a shop." Or other people just look at me as though I've got two heads, and they they just don't get it all. But
no,
it brings up a bit of conversation.
It's memorable. It's memorable, and it is, if you're shifting along the street, it is you can go past your Chippy. It comes up quick, doesn't it? It's a fast road.
Yeah.
So the name's noticeable.
Yeah, I've had people ask us if it's Welsh. That seems to be a big thing. They think it's a Welsh name, Well, but yeah, there we go.
Okay. So from 1998, Dan grew, Mia came along. You and Anne have just been plugging away, perfecting your fish and chips. In 2006, in 2006, 9 years after you put that new range in, Chippy Chat came along, and the internet was booming.
Yeah.
Had you just been perfecting your technique, just going, getting on with getting older, I suppose, or did anything else significant happen in that decade before you found Chippy Chat?
Kids, just kids. Everything were around and kids. Me plugging away, working hard at Chip Shop, and got a little bit in a rut with it, I think. And then in 1998, I can remember building a website for it. I can remember being really early on, having a really good website for Chip Shop and loads of local history on it and all that. And then when it got to Chippy Chat, a tiny advert in a magazine. You'll probably tell me which magazine you stuck a little advert in. It was I think it was the magazine that you ended up getting.
Yeah, fryer and fast food operator, probably.
That's it. That was the man. He once came to my shop as well. That guy who got
Keith,
that off.
Keith Dixon.
Yeah. He came and we did a piece on. I can't remember if it was for filter machines or what it was. But anyway, I digress. I was just plodding along. I'd won this competition years back. I was still fairly busy, but plodding along in a bit of a rut. And then along came Chippy Chat, and I just saw this little advert. And because I was interested in computing and I'd been making my own website and one thing and another, I just followed this link on this little advert. And I don't even know if I introduced myself. I can't even remember. I can remember just making a profile, calling myself Mr. Chips, because that were available. And I just thought, I'll call myself Mr. Chips, and jumped onto Chippy Chat. And it were a bit of a game changer for me, to be quite honest. It were a godsend at the time, because there were no Facebook, there were no Facebook groups. I'd been once, I think, to an NFFF meeting, local, and it didn't really. I didn't really feel part of that little group. It were only a little group locally, so I had felt like I were on my own, and suddenly I got all these other people who were in the same trade and doing the same thing, and
most of them as normal as you and me.
Most of them as normal as as us. Some of them not quite so normal as us, but But there you go. That's how it is. And,
but you've made lifelong friends on there, haven't you? I know there's the haggis up in Scotland, Ian Watson. He's got the same surname as you, but you're not related.
Yeah,
you're really friendly with him, and
we've made really good friends. We went down to New Forest on holiday in his van last year, and we called in on Jeff at Coast Guard.
Coast Guard Jeff, remember
Coast
him?
Guard Jeff on Ailing Island. We've been to Marcus French's shop, and we've met Marcus a few times at different things.
Lovely man.
Yeah.
Francine down in Plymouth, Neil and Lydia Marshall.
Yeah, Neil's not so well, bless him. It's just
we send him the best.
We do send him our best, yeah, definitely.
Lovely man.
Yeah, we just had a really, really good. It were a good cross section at our trade, really. I think. I'm trying to think now, but there were at least three winners of Fish and Chip Shop a year in them early days. There were Martin Bunny, Callum, and you, who were all just normal members of Chippy Chat in them early days, who had all either won or went on to win Fish and Chip Shop a year.
It's where we met Stelios as well.
It's where we met Stelios, yeah.
Matt Bedford as well.
Matt did our Daniel's wedding last year. He came up with he's a good lad.
He's a great guy.
He did fish and chips for his wedding, so that were nice. That were a nice touch.
That's a difficult gig for him, cooking fish and chips for someone like you. But believe me, that would make me very nervous. So we met and we had I organised a few social events, and Fish Fryers got together. We had some summer barbecues and some Christmas balls and that sort of thing. And then I was lucky enough to actually come and visit you at Wypass. And that day was the day I had the best fish and chips I've ever tasted. And I've told a lot of people, because you don't get a figure like I've got without eating a lot of fish and chips. And I've tried fish and chips all over the land, and I've had fish and chips from your shop 3 times, only 3 times. But if I had to put my list of best fish and chips I've ever had, you would take first, second, and third. And I want you to know that.
That's really kind.
Well, look. I didn't invite you on to blow smoke up your ass, because we've been friends. We've been friends for a long time. But I've told so many people, because people do ask me, "Where's the best fish and chips you've ever had?" And I always say, Brent Watson at Wypass. Just go and try it. Just go and see for yourself. And the reason I didn't want to drop that bomb too early in our conversation was because I wanted to try and tease from you what it is that you do that makes your fish and chips so fucking good. So good. And I know what the answer is. It's your inability to compromise and your understanding of the raw materials. You know, you've obviously learned from somebody who you hold really dearly. You're not frying on the most up-to-date state-of-the-art equipment. You're frying on equipment that you understand. You know how to get the best out of it. You know your raw materials. You know how to cook a 6-ounce piece of fish. You know how your batter works. You know how to drop 10 bits of fish and how that's different to dropping 6 bits of fish. And, you just understand your raw material and how to make it work. When you talked about the summer, the winter, how you're keeping your chips, that to me just says, here's a guy who fully appreciates everything that's going on in his shop. And I've done loads of these podcasts, and I've spoken to award-winning master fryers with amazing chip shops that have won big awards, and now I've got you on, and for me, you're a food hero to me. But what you do, Brent, is a really good lesson to everybody in the trade, because you don't need to have the latest equipment. You don't need to have the fanciest shop. You are more typical of fish fryers out there than these big award-winning sites. You are really the more typical of most operators out there that are a husband and wife team that do the very best every day with what you've got. There are these big, amazing flagship fancy shops for which I have utmost respect for, but you are really where this industry's come from, and I wanted to recognise that while I've got you on. But I've got some more questions for you that really revolve around how you've managed to stay true to your original mandate. Because when you started with your dad and there was just you and Anne in that shop, it was a different world to what we're living in now. I know in the earlier days when you were first starting out and you were trading, you weren't registered for VAT because you weren't taking enough money. Then you got to a point where you went onto the flat rate scheme because that worked better for you. But then as your business grew and you got better and you won that award, you found it hard to stay within the confines of the flat rate scheme. You started closing Mondays, you took a few days off here and there, but eventually you had to start paying 20% VAT instead of the 12 or 12.5%, whatever it was at the time. And you've had to adapt. Was there at any point in your journey where you thought, I need to do more? Because you only do cod, you only do one size of fish. You know, you've kept your business really simple. Was there any point when you thought about deviating and growing your menu? Did you ever think about, well, I could get a second shop, I'd grow my business? What made you stay on the track that you're on? Because your business provides for you and your family, but you've got the balance right. You know, you don't work Saturday nights, you don't open Mondays. I know what you take. You take a really good take, but you've never wanted to be more than that. And I think I admire that so much because you've got enough. And you get the best fish and chips I've ever tasted. So I want you to tell me more. What's been the driver for you? What's helped you make the decisions that you've made?
I think really one side is just because I don't think managerial side of a business is really my forte. I really think I'm just a fish fryer who fries fish and chips with help from my staff, and my staff are great. I've got great staff. My staff retention, one of my staff came when Mia were born in 2021, and she's still with me. The other one came a few years later. She's still with me, and the third member of staff worked for me 21 years ago and came knocking on my door saying, "Can I come back and work for you, Brent? You're the best boss I've ever had." And I've always looked after my staff, and I really appreciate my staff. When I worked in motor trade, I had an horrible boss early on, horrible man. And I can always remember thinking, if I were ever boss, I would never be like that. I'd try and be a good boss and try and be a good guy. And although I've got great staff and they make me look great, I actually posted that on Facebook after Good Friday because my staff were just absolutely on it. And they do make me look great, you know. Everybody comes at shop, and the more people what say it's a fine oiled machine. It's unbelievable. And I've got a guy who wants local cinema in Barnsley, and he come in. He says we went to Coast. He says, "Oh my God!" I said to my wife, "They could learn so much to go to Brent's. Just how you do it. Bish bash bosh. You're in, you're out." And fish and chips is about that, isn't it? Fish and chips is no good if it's stood there. It's horrible if it's stood there. You've got to have the mindset. If it's going to be real, if it's going to be a quiet day, we have quiet days. Everybody has a random quiet day. Well, you can't just fry fish from one end up top box to other, can you? You've got to just have a couple ready, and you've got to look at that couple. I always look at my fish when I'm getting them out on a Friday night, and I always think, if one of my peers walked in my shop, whether that be you, Stelios, Neil Marshall, Marcus French, any of you lot, would I sell you that piece of fish? And if the answer to that is no, I'll throw it in bin. So if it kills and it all looks like batter's blown off it underneath, and it just and I think, would I sell that to one of my peers? And if my truthful answer is no, then I'd throw that piece of fish. I won't put that piece of fish up. I think if I got a manager in a shop, he'd sell that piece of fish because it's not his shop, and he won't be right bothered. And I think that's a big difference. I think it's a massive step from going from one site to two and not being able to split yourself in half.
I feel like a fraud because I can normally walk into a shop and I can tell what fish they're using, whether they're cutting down big fish, if that's the whole fish. I can tell whether there's colouring in the batter. I can tell what fry medium, and yet I could have sworn you were a beef dripping shop, but you're not. No. And that took me off my feet, because I've raved about your fish and chips to so many people, and I didn't even know that it was cooked in veg oil. No. I feel like a fraud. But I watched a review of your shop. Somebody came, a bit like the food review guy.
The YouTube guy.
Yeah, he came and tried you on recommendation. Didn't tell you. Yeah. Sat in his camper van and filmed the review, and was weeping. It was so good. He was, he absolutely loved your fish and chip. And when I watched that, I just thought, mate, you're just every other person that ever comes into your chip shop. They just leave and they want to come back and buy it again. And I felt that when I can't wait till the next time I can come to your shop. That's how I feel about your fish and chips. And it's nice to see you as well, of course.
Yeah. So the only other person that fries in my shop is Anne. So if it ain't me, it's Anne, and if it's not Anne, it's me. Anne fries on a Tuesday, so I have Tuesdays off. So basically, I have Saturday night off, I have Sunday off, I have Monday off. I only prep on a Tuesday, so I've got most of Tuesday off, and then I work my ass off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday lunch again, and that's my week. So
it sounds like really good balance.
Yeah.
Really good balance.
We don't open all day. We're very traditional. We open 11:30 while 1:30. We reopen at 4:30 while 7:30. Yeah. That's Tuesday to Thursday. Friday we do go all the way through because we just couldn't get doors shut. We were trying to shut at 1:30, 2 o'clock, and they were still coming. And then we were opening back in them days. We opened at 3:30. We've gone to 4:30 now. We've chopped an hour off when energy crisis hit. We chopped that first hour were a little bit slow, so we just chopped it off. And I think you've got to own your hours and own your craft and train your customers to come when you want them to come, when you're open, and then you're busy. And busy fish and chips is always going to be nicer than slow fish and chips, no matter what anybody says. If they're flying out at the door, your fish are fresh, your chips are fresh. You just get in that cycle, don't you, where you like fry after fry after fry after fry, and they're just going out, they're flying out at the door. They're not stood. And it's just a great way of doing fish and chips. I think it's the only way of doing fish and chips. I think them days of being open all day and having them piled high and just sat there, you're never going to be great, you know. So we've got no click and collect. We've got no apps. We've got a telephone, so you can ring and pre-order if you're going to take. I don't know, if you're going to come for 10 fish, you can give me a quick ring and say, I'm just letting you know, Brent, in 20 minutes I'll be in for 10 fish. And I can think, right, I'll put that on my radar, and I'll up my game a bit as towards that, and then drop that down or whatever. We've just took away some stuff off his menu, so we're actually reducing menu. We're just making it a leaner, more easily managed regime of frying, really. So, you know, we've got rid of beef burgers because we just didn't sell many. You know, you're selling hundreds and hundreds of pieces of fish and like 3 burgers a week. What's point? So we got rid of that. We got rid of chicken burgers because I'm sick to death of people thinking they come with salad and mayonnaise. And I'm like, it's a fish and chip shop, mate. It's just a chicken burger. If you want it on well, you'd call it a bread cake. We'd call it a tea cake, won't we? We're not going to that. That's an all new can of worms, isn't it? That. But
that
anyway,
is,
chicken burger on a tea cake, and that's your lot. And I got that fed up of people. Well, doesn't it come with salad? And it comes with salad at so and so takeaway in town. And I'm like, well, go to so and so takeaway, fish and chip shop. So I've took that off. We did a chili con carne, homemade chili con carne. We'd make a batch, freeze them down in pots, and we'd sell chili con carne with chips, not with rice at all, with chips. I know it's a bit bizarre. It's something we inherited from Dad, so we've done it for 30 odd years. But same thing. You look at your till receipt at end of week. You've done 3, you know.
Yeah.
So I've took that off, and I've got rid of one at pies as well. Meat and potato pie were particularly slow compared with us other pies, what we do. So I've took that off. So I'm trying to own it down to make it like what I do. We sell quite a lot of, and we're turning it. So yeah, that's where we're at with all that. I went for a Sea Fish Quality Award after joining Chippy Chat, and got that. Got a Sea Fish Quality Award. And then Ed Treble F took it over, didn't they? It became a Quality Award.
Quality assessment, I think.
Was it, yeah. So I went for that, and I think I was first shop in Northern England to get that. I can remember it started in New Year, and Mark Drummond came and assessed us. He was the assessor that day, and so I think it was 2nd of January. So we got that. But I sort of saw him as a one-ride pony. I just wanted to get in Barnsley Chronicle saying that I'd won this award to win. And then I thought, you know, if I go for it again, I'm not going to really get in. I'm not going to get in local rag again because it's just same thing. So I did both of them once because I could see benefit of that. I couldn't see much benefit carrying on, whether that's right or wrong.
You know you're doing things right anyway. But you've always been a paid up member of the NFFF. You've always supported the industry from that end, which is I've always been a paid up member of the NFFF as well. So
I think NFFF. I think they get a lot of flack, and I think we aren't going too deep into it because I don't really want to do that. But I think they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't with a lot of things. And it's not easy. It's not easy. But, you know, I am a paid up member and I do believe that I ought to be a paid up member. So, yeah, I've been a member for quite a long time. I was looking at the original membership booklet that they gave you other day. When Stelios had asked me if I'd come along and do this, I was going through a few things. That's where I found them fish prices from 70s. But I also found my original booklet from early 90s when I joined NFFF. I'm sure it were early 90s. But so been quite a few little moments going through years where things have happened. I also come across a bloke called Andrew Lomas, who's a spud merchant, and he's from like to the side of Sheffield, I think, so it's quite away from us. And that were a game changer. That were a game changer. I was using a local guy in Barnsley, and we we were struggling with spuds, and I met Andrew, got him to come to my shop, and I've told him that, I've told him that I've built up a fantastic relationship with him, and yeah, I think I get some of the best spuds out there off him. I really do.
It's important. Do you have a favourite like boat and like fish that you like to use, or a selection of boats that you like? Do you always like to choose the same fish?
Yeah, I generally we're Icelandic cod. Usually, I'm saying usually 32 plus, but 32 plus has been a bit scarce. Skinless, boneless. We're on 1632 at minute. Skinless, boneless, Icelandic. Fish prices are what they are, aren't they? It's a very difficult thing. I know. Fish is going to be one of the challenges. Certainly for the next couple of years, I think, for fillets. From what I'm reading and watching, and I thought Gary Warner did an excellent podcast for Stelios.
Was good, wasn't it?
Really excellent. Good. Yeah, I don't actually deal with Gary. I did deal with Gary a long time ago. I can remember Gary walking in my shop and being delivery man. To be quite honest, that's how far back we go. But I thought that podcast were excellent. Absolutely.
But you're very disciplined anyway. If you're cutting to 6 ounces, you know what your margin is. You know what your yield is, and you know obviously how to protect your margins. You're not afraid of putting price up because your product's so good, people will go with it, and they know that you're not greedy.
I'm not the most expensive shop in Barnsley. But I ain't got the overheads of the most expensive shop in Barnsley. He's a lot more expensive than me. He's got a really new range. He's got a fairly new shop. He's got a lot more staff. That's his price. People will come into my shop and go on about his price, and I'll go, yeah, but that's his price. That's what business is. My price is set on what I can make a good living, and try and keep you sweet at the same time as a customer. It is what it is, isn't it? You run your business the way you want to run your business, not based on somebody else. There's a lot cheaper. There's a lot cheaper fish and chips in Barnsley than mine, and there's some more expensive. I'm by no means most expensive, but I try my best. I try my best to be absolutely spot on.
Exactly that. I always try and give the listener something to take away from a podcast, and if anything, what I was hoping they would get from this, and they will have got it 100%, is that that success in this business is all about how you set your stall up. You don't have to have a massive presence in the high street, on the internet, adverts everywhere, shiny, spangly new range, because with all of those things comes cost. And, if you've got loads of staff and loads of overheads, you need to price yourself at a certain rate in order to make money. What you've got is something that is so slick and so polished. You've got no borrowings on your chippy. I assume you may have, you may not. But what you've got is you and your wife, a couple of staff, a really stripped down menu with very little waste on it. You've got a very sharp knife, some really good discipline. You keep your oil really clean. You've got a range that's 28 years old but doesn't skip a beat, that intimately. You know it as well as your wife, your kids and your dogs. You know that range inside out and back to front. And you've got your costs down on the floor. You've got them as low as you can, which means that when your price goes up to you, you can reflect that you can pass that on to your customers, knowing that you're just protecting what you've got, and you'll still be here next year and the year after. And that's the lesson that's come from this. You can do the job so well without the without the showy fireworks, you are, to me, one of the very best fish and chip operators I've ever met. And the proof is not just in the product, but in the fact that you're a happy man, you're a content man. You don't, the wealth doesn't just come from owning and running a successful business. It comes from having a very happy life from doing what you've done.
Yeah.
And
I guess at the end of the day, it's a life-work balance. And it's not about, for me anyway, personally, and the guy from Barnsley who did the podcast, Whitehead's
Jeff,
fantastic podcast. He nailed it. I can only eat one meal a day. Why do I need any more money than that? And that's sort of way I sort of look at it. And going back to your product, my dad used to say to me, "You're as good as your last fry," and I think that's a fantastic saying in fish and chips. You're as good as your last fry, because if your last fry is crap, you're crap. If your last fry is superb, you're on top of your game, aren't you? And I think for pricing and where you run your business, we've plodded along. We don't owe anybody. As business as ours, we've got no rent, we've got no mortgage. I feel for people. I feel for youngsters coming into who've got mortgages and big rents on some of the shops. It's going to be tough. And I think fish and chips. Fish and chips I think it'll always have a future because it is a special thing to the nation. And I think we're very lucky in that. We're very lucky that we've got that. We've got to make most of that. But I do think that unless you're on top of your game, we go out for Sunday lunch. We go out for Sunday lunches quite a bit, and you go to a pub that's on top of its game, and it's absolutely packed. You've got to book 2 weeks before to get a Sunday lunch, And you see other pubs which there's nobody in them and they're rubbish. So it's proof is in pudding, isn't it? We went for Sunday lunch. We took my mum. So me and Anna, my mum still lives above Chip Shop, and we're sort of caring for her. She's got onset of Alzheimer's, so we're looking after mum at the same time. So we every other week now we're trying to take mum out for a Sunday lunch and then cook a Sunday lunch here in between. And so we went for Sunday lunch last week. Went down into the next village, nice restaurant, really, really nice Sunday lunch. It were 122 quid for three of us.
Wow.
For Sunday lunch. We had a starter and a main and one drink each. It were 122 quid. So, ours fish and chips dear at just under a tenner, or I think ours at 8.85 now. But there's no comparison, is there? There's no. I had a guy come in and he came in and he said, cost of living crisis. He says, we've come here instead of going at pub. So he got fish and chips, God knows how many times, and some pop and some bread cakes and this, that, or that. And it was 57 quid. And he's smiling at me, this bloke. That'll be 57 quid. And it's like big grin on his face. And he went, if I'd have took my family to pub this Friday night, it'd have been 157 quid. My bill. He says, and I've come here and it's 57. So we're thinking...
And he'll enjoy it more as well.
And I'm thinking, I can remember when a full dinner time shift for 57 quid.
Yeah.
I can remember taking 57 quid and thinking, we've done all right today. And now one order can be 57 quid. But that's how it is, isn't it? That's the world we live in.
So Dan, he's done a few shifts, and Mia, she's done a few in the shop as well. But they're both away doing their own things. I know Dan is really, really talented musician. I know that's not his career aspirations, but I have to mention it because the boy is really talented with banjo. He's so good. With them following their own career paths and their own dreams, what's your future hold? What's going to happen to YPass? Because we're not getting any younger, are we?
We're not. We're not.
Do you have a plan? Do you have a strategy? You're going to reduce your hours, keep even go down to 2 days a week just to keep your eye in, or is that your business and you don't really want to talk about it?
No, I think to be quite honest, I've sort of told Anne that I'd like to be retired at 60. Now, that's only 2 years from now. I'm 58. Yeah. I'd like to finish at 60, and I've thought about all kinds of scenarios. Do I sell shop on a lease, or and I always come back to the fact that it might be better to just sell the freehold. Because obviously there's the house and the shop. So I think as we stand now, when I'm 60-ish. Don't tell Anne that, because she's banking on 60. Anne's had enough. She's got terrible backache. She's struggling. Bless her. She's menopause has took its toll, and peeling up.
She's a lovely lady. I love Anne to bits.
Picking all them sacks of spuds up, while pregnant has took its toll. So yeah, I have said 60, but whether I put it on market at 60, and I don't know. It's a cracking business. It really is.
It really is.
It's a little village shop. It runs itself, really. It's like a little sewing machine zipping away, And
what about your staff? Do you think if you left it to staff to run, could you walk away from it, or would that just be?
No, that'd be hellish for me. Not that I have got bad staff. My staff are brilliant, but I couldn't. Yeah. If it, I don't think I could. I don't think I could cope with that. I'd end up back there all the time. Yeah. I'd end up back there all the time. I think a straight cut off. So yeah. So if anybody wants a really cracking shop in another couple of years, come and find me. But
I tell you what, I'd love a day on the tools with you, just to come and watch you fry, because like I said, for me it'd be my privilege. I'll wash up and I'll sweep the floors, and now Gordon Hillen would be horrified at that, because he's never seen me wash up or pick up all the training schools we've done for 10 years. As soon as there's a bit of washing up to do, I evaporate, I disappear.
Yeah.
But I'd love to come and have a day on the tools with you, definitely. So we've been on, and I don't know if you know, we've been talking for an hour and a half now.
All right. We'll be getting done by Big Boss.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you want to mention or talk about? Or you've got an opportunity. I always give everyone an opportunity to say about people in the trade, or any subject that I haven't brought up that you were hoping that we might have covered today. I wanted to give you an opportunity to to cover that off as well before we wrap things up.
The only other thing that I'd say is for everybody really is, I think you need something else besides working in fish and chip industry. I think everybody who works in fish and chip industry, it's so demanding on your mental ability, and your work life balance is.
It can suck you in, can't it? It can suck you in.
It's very important. So, as you mentioned, we built our house. We bought a derelict bungalow, for want of a better word, a dormer bungalow, just up road from shop. So we're about 500 yards from shop. That's all. So getting to work and back. My daily commute in car is 40 seconds. On foot is 4 minutes. A little bit like you when you were living in Chatterley. So that kind of distance. And we built the house, and it took us 4 years we knocked this 3-bedroom derelict dormer bungalow into well, everybody calls it Watson Towers, but
It's beautiful.
6 bedrooms.
It is beautiful. It's lovely.
It's a lovely house. But it took us 4 years, and me, my dad, and my pal did that every weekend. And every time we shut shop for 2 weeks in summer, and I'd take kids off for holiday, and we'd work on the house. And it almost were like running 2 businesses. When I look back, I think I don't know how I managed it, but anyway, there we go. We built that, and then when we got to end of it and it was finished, Anne said, "What are you going to do now?" And I thought about it, and I thought, well, I've had motorbikes most of my life, and I got rid of them when we got kids. I was just not getting out my motorbikes, so I thought, well, I don't want to really go. And I'd had a couple of near scrapes on motorbikes, but no mega serious. And I thought, nah, I don't want to go back motorbiking. And I'd done fishing. I'd been fishing when Dan was little. We used to go off fishing, and we'd done a bit of that. I ended up taking up amateur radio, which is I'd done a bit of CB radio, as most people did back in the 80s when it were a big craze. And my cousin had took his license and become an amateur radio operator. And I was going through some old bits and bobs, and I found an old CB radio. So I messaged my cousin and said, basically, what would it need to get this? So he said, well, why, rather than do that, why don't you take your exams and become an AM radio operator? And I was like, oh, I can't be going to, because back in the day, you had to go to technical college, you had to go to night school.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, no, you don't do that anymore. It's in 3 stages, and you do it at your local radio club. So I ended up, to cut a long story short, I ended up taking these 3 licenses and becoming a Class A amateur radio operator, which is about half of a physics degree in work. So for a lad who left school with no exams whatsoever, and my dyslexia was shocking as a youngster. I was absolutely, and this is back in days where you were just put it thick corner, there was no. I didn't let myself down. System let me down. Is how I see it now. But I decided to do that. So basically, what I'm saying is, every fish fryer should have a bit of summer to do.
Yeah.
Other than, because when I'm in here, I'm in my radio room right now. It's a right mess at the back of me. My radios are this way. You can't see them. But when I'm in here, I'm not thinking about price of fish. I'm not thinking about how many sacks of spuds I need. I'm not thinking about. All I'm thinking about is finding that specific island and working that operator and getting that in my log. And it's a bit like train spotting. You're picking islands and you're trying to work these islands, and it's not easy. It's quite difficult at times. That's my little thing on it. I just think that that's my little hobby. And I know when Jeff from Hornsey were on, he was saying he's a lot to do with football club, and he said the same thing. When I'm on my mower cutting my grass, I'm not thinking about my fish or my chips or so
there's a lot to be said for that. I mentioned earlier that we're none of us getting any older. I want to mention this because it's really fresh in my head. I very recently lost one of the brightest lights in my life, and oh god, he was only 48 years old, Brent, and he was just such an amazing person. He was taken far too soon, and I don't want to finish this on a low note, but we're all sitting on a bomb. None of us know how much time we've got. We all know how much money we've got. And we need to spend our time more wisely than we spend our money. And we've got to be careful with our money. I felt like him passing was a real wake-up call for me.
Yeah.
What you're saying is absolutely right. You need to laugh and love as much as you can every single day. And fish and chips isn't the be all and end all of everything. It's okay to be passionate about it and to be, and to take your business very seriously. But there's more to life than fish and chips. So I think that's a good place to end it today. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I'll be coming up for a fourth portion before you know it, because especially
before I retire,
especially if I know you're going to be retiring soon. And if you ever go out in a camper van again, I don't live in that same place I lived before. I now have a house with a bit of land. I've got 12 horses. I've got plenty of room for you to pitch up your camper van,
and have a catch up.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime, mate. Thank you so much, and I'll see you either at the next open day or convention, or out there at a chip shop at some point.
Yeah, cheers, Mark. Thank you very much.
That's a wrap on today's episode with Mark Petrou and Brent Watson. What stood out to you? Join the conversation in the Ceres podcast discussion group on Facebook, because we'd love to hear what you think. If you want more insider insights, exclusive discounts, competitions and industry updates, join our mailing list and our WhatsApp announcement group, both free and both in the episode show notes. At Ceres, we're here to back your business with smart products, real talk and helpful tools. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.